Imagine a tiny stretch of water where a few $100s worth of modified drones can instantly paralyze $1 trillion of Western cargo. Right now, a silent war in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is forcing massive ships to abandon the shortest route connecting global manufacturing to your front door. You might think a distant conflict in the middle of the desert has absolutely nothing to do with your personal finances or daily life. But within the next few months, the ripple effects of this maritime chokehold will quietly change the exact price tag on everything you buy. What nobody ever warned you about is how fragile the invisible network of global shipping actually is until someone decides to break it completely. I break down one critical economic or psychological concept per video in plain English, so you can see how the world really works. If you want to understand how hidden global forces shape your money and your future, then subscribe right now and hit the bell. This entire crisis comes down to a principle known as Chokepoint Economics, which explains how a single geographic bottleneck controls global trade. The Red Sea handles nearly 15% of all global maritime trade and roughly 30% of the world's total container ship traffic. When Houthi militants began launching targeted strikes in late 2023, they weaponized a geographic vulnerability that world powers spent centuries trying to protect. Before I reveal the most shocking part of how this destroys retail margins, let us first look at how the mathematics of routing works. When a shipping lane becomes a combat zone, companies face a brutal choice between risking total destruction or sailing around an entire continent. Diverting a massive container vessel around Africa's Cape of Good Hope adds an extra 3,500 nautical miles to the journey. That massive detour requires up to 1,000 extra tons of fuel per voyage and extends transit times by 15 full days. Think about the last time you ordered a package online, and imagine if the entire delivery system suddenly ground to a complete halt. This is our first pattern interrupt, because this delay means billions of dollars in inventory are literally floating in limbo for weeks. What most people never realize is that when cargo ships sit on the ocean longer, the effective capacity of global shipping plummets. J.P. Morgan research shows this detour causes an immediate 9% reduction in the total available shipping capacity across the globe. When the supply of available ships drops while consumer demand stays high, the market reacts with a massive surge in freight prices. Spot rates for shipping containers on key routes from Asia to Europe surged by over 300% in just a few weeks. But the real driver of this $1 trillion crisis is not just the price of fuel or the extra days at sea. The real catalyst is the psychology of risk management and the hidden world of maritime insurance that dictates where ships can sail. Before a multi-million-dollar vessel enters any risky waterway, the owners must secure what is known as a war risk insurance premium. In early 2024, these specialized premiums skyrocketed from a standard $10,000 to over $500,000 per single voyage. When insurance premiums become more expensive than the actual fuel, it makes the shorter route completely unviable for standard commercial fleets. This is exactly why the United States military stepped in to launch a massive naval coalition called Operation Prosperity Guardian. Washington realized that if the Red Sea remained closed, the global economy would suffer a severe inflationary shock within a year. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you next reveals exactly why military might cannot easily fix this economic trap. The U.S. Navy deployed multiple carrier strike groups to intercept incoming missiles and protect the freedom of navigation for all countries. But the economics of this military engagement are fundamentally asymmetric and completely unsustainable over a long period of time. A standard Houthi attack drone costs around $20,000 to build using readily available commercial parts and basic technology. To destroy that cheap drone, the U.S. military fires a sophisticated Standard Missile-2, which costs over $2 million per shot. This means Western forces are spending 100 times more money defending the ships than the attackers spend trying to sink them. This staggering financial asymmetry is a classic example of dark economic warfare designed to drain major superpowers of their resources. World Bank data shows container ship transits through the Suez Canal dropped by 90% despite the presence of Western warships. Now look at what this means for your everyday life, because the hidden damage is happening in the retail supply chains. Modern manufacturing relies on what engineers call just-in-time logistics, where components arrive at the factory precisely when they are needed. When the Red Sea bottleneck tightened, massive automotive plants across Europe had to completely suspend production because vital parts were delayed. If a factory cannot get a single microchip or wiring harness from Asia, the entire assembly line stops moving for days. This is our second pattern interrupt because the exact same supply shock is currently hitting the clothes and electronics you buy. Companies are forced to choose between absorbing these massive logistics costs or passing the bill directly down to the average consumer. When profit margins are thin, most mass-market retailers have no choice but to raise prices on the shelves to survive. Economists estimate this ongoing maritime disruption could easily add nearly 1 full percentage point to global core goods inflation this year. Your brain does not naturally connect a drone strike in the Middle East to the rising cost of your morning routine. But once you understand the concept of Chokepoint Economics, you will see these hidden connections everywhere in the modern global economy. The global trade system was built on the assumption of permanent peace and open seas. But that assumption is no longer true. Companies are now spending billions of dollars to diversify their supply chains by moving manufacturing closer to their primary consumer markets. This massive structural shift away from efficient global networks toward regional supply chains will keep prices elevated for a long time. So let us pull this entire picture together so you can remember exactly how this crisis alters your financial world. First, a tiny geographic choke point handles 15% of global trade, and a sudden disruption there forces massive rerouting around Africa. Second, this massive detour adds 15 days of travel time and reduces the total effective capacity of global shipping by 9%. Third, insurance premiums rocket from $10,000 to $500,000, making the shorter route economically impossible to take. Fourth, the military defense costs 100 times more than the attacks, which creates a devastating economic asymmetry for Western nations. Finally, these compounding logistical delays destroy just-in-time manufacturing models and ultimately force consumer prices to climb higher everywhere. The name for this systemic vulnerability is Chokepoint Economics, and once you recognize it, you understand the real cost of global conflict. Share this video with one person you know who deserves to understand how international conflicts actually hit their own personal wallet. One deep conversation about this hidden economic machinery could completely change how they look at global news and their money. When we look beyond the surface headlines, we discover that the battlefield is not just the ocean, but the entire global economy. Thank you for watching all the way to the end of this analysis and staying curious about how our world works. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next breakdown of the hidden forces shaping your financial life.